Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for a one-of-a-kind webinar. The Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce is excited to have partnered with the University of Southern California to bring you resources available to our member base. I'm Olivia Rios, Director of Operations and Programs at the Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce. Today, we want to use this time to learn about how we can move forward with our member base to get contracts opportunities at the university. So we want to have a real conversation to know how to go about it. But first, I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Turner, Associate Vice President, Business Diversity and Economics Opportunity at USC. Also, Allyson Gibson, who the Executive Director of Facilities Planning and Management, and Effie Sanders, Vice President of Civic Engagement at Economic Opportunities and Partnerships. But before we start, please mute yourselves. We ask that you ask questions in the chat box, and this will not be an interactive session, but rather we want to make sure that we address all questions at the end of the session. But now I'd like to introduce the Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce Chairman, Mr. Daryl Salceda.
Well, good afternoon. I appreciate 35 of you being on time, but I want to say good afternoon, members. I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with yourselves, Michelle Turner, Allyson Gibson, and Effie Sanders of USC. We'll be having a long overdue conversation about contracting opportunities and the process of how to apply and win contracts. The objective of this webinar is to prepare you to understand the RFQ process and what is required. I encourage you to stop what you're doing and pay close attention to this conversation. Myself and the LA Latino Chamber of Commerce Contract Ready Committee has spent over 3 years getting to this point. At this time, I want to thank Michelle, Allyson, and Effie for their commitment and their time they have brought to our membership. I myself have been a small business for over 35 years, and as the chair of the LA Latino Chamber of Commerce, these type of business opportunity is a huge, huge game changer. This is what the chamber is passionate about. I would like at this point to turn the webinar over to Allyson. Okay, Allyson.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to share a little bit of information today to give you some insights on what it means to do work at USC and how that will allow you opportunities for success within our environment. I'm going to share a presentation here with you. Okay, hopefully it's running. There we go. So this presentation addresses opportunities for architects, engineers, and contractors. So we'll be going back and forth a little bit between design components and procurement and construction procurement. Just a quick overview, USC has multiple locations. Most are familiar with the University Park campus, or what we call UPC, which is the main campus of USC. But we also have the Health Sciences campus, or HSC, the University Village, which is adjacent to the UPC campus, our Wrigley facility, which is on Catalina Island, and multiple offsite locations. So we have 415 buildings, and primarily those buildings are governed by Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety and OSHPD or HCI, which are the healthcare facility requirements. As a private institution, our approach to procurement of services is through best value. So we are not a public entity. We don't advertise broadly through all the different resources that are out there like PlanNet. We directly reach out to pre-qualified vendors within our system for specific projects that are linked to the specialties that those firms identify. And we have our own infrastructure and utility distribution at our sites. We own those. This gives you a little bit of an idea of the breadth of our reach. So 226 acres make up the University Park campus, and then the Health Science campus, which is a total of about 6.5 miles away from the UPC campus, is another 79 acres. We show the LA Memorial Coliseum site in that we work on that campus, but we have a long-term lease there. We do not own the Coliseum. The Coliseum is owned by a private entity. This gives you an idea of what work comes through facilities planning and management on a regular basis. So this chart breaks down from fiscal year 2011 through fiscal year 2020, which is the most recent time that this chart was updated, but it shows that we run an average of about 425 projects through our office per year. A large number of those projects are in the $250,000 to $350,000 range. We have a very few number of projects that are large scale projects. We are continually working on smaller projects that turn over very quickly, and it might be something as simple as taking a conference room and creating a couple office spaces out of that for new faculty, or fitting out a brand new lab for a newly hired researcher. Those are the bread and butter projects that come through our office. Facilities planning and management is broken out into two major components. There's capital construction that deals with the majority of projects that you would be involved in. Facilities planning, facilities management services deals with engineering support. They have some of their own projects that are related to asset renewal, and they have projects that are related to the equipment and small single trade type projects that may have to be done on our different facilities. So our project development process is a little bit unique. We don't have an overall capital improvement program like you might have seen with the University of California system or the CSU system. Those systems have to plan out a master plan over multiple years of where the funding will be going and identify specific projects. We don't have that because the funding of our projects is based on the needs of the individual schools. And when we say a school, that would be the School of Drama, Rossier School of Education, etc. Those are the schools within the university, and the auxiliary groups, which would be things related to student services or athletics, and the university overall. So all of those projects come out of the needs of those individual groups, identifying something that they need, and then they provide the funding for those projects from the revenue that those different groups generate. So for example, the bookstore is its own entity. They sell things through the bookstore, they create profit and revenue, and the revenue that they generate can turn into a need for a project. They might want to change a part of the university bookstore, and then that would become a project for us funded by that entity. And we're also have projects funded by donors. A lot of times when you see naming rights on a building, donors have given that money, and those projects are linked to what that donor would like that money to go toward. The most recent would be Cromwell Field, which is the track and field stadium that came from a donation to athletics. There are also facilities funded projects that deal with our asset renewal. And the timing of all of these projects develops and move forward based on the availability of the funding that's in place. So in addition to the bread and butter projects that I mentioned before, We also have projects that are specific in nature, but to give you an idea of the type of projects that fall on the larger scale. So this imaging suite that is in Michelson Center was $5.5 million. It's about just over 6,000 square feet. And it's a project to go in and hook up the imaging suite and all of the utilities that go with it. So this project would come to us as a request from Michelson saying we need to create an imaging suite, and here are the things that we need in this imaging suite. Our project manager would go out, meet with them, develop what the scope of work is, and then go through the process of selecting a group of architects to receive a specific project RFQ, RFP to develop a fee proposal to perform that work. Once all those proposals are in, the project manager would make a selection of one of those firms, and then that firm would do the design portion. And then subsequently, when we get to construction, there will be a reach out to different firms who have this type of experience, and all of those construction companies would submit a quote, and then the selected bidder would move forward. Another type of project would be, building out something within the hospital. This one is a radiology catheterization lab, $3.2 million, and all within the health sciences campus in Keck Hospital. Again, these projects require experience with OSHPD, what used to be the hospital governing organization and now is HCI. An electrical service upgrade would be an opportunity for a firm that is specifically focused on their business on electrical. So an electrical contractor would be the prime on this type of work. And the same selection process happens as we would do for general contracting for design. It's a reach out for proposals based on the design scope that is included in this particular project. And we would get multiple quotes and we would select from those bidders. Again, this is the best value procurement process. So there are times when the lowest bidder is not selected. There are reasons for that. It could be, the lowest bidder actually hasn't included everything, on further observation, they've missed something, or they don't have the proper license. Different factors like that can keep us from awarding to a lowest bidder. Finally, an AHU replacement project. Again, a mechanical contractor would be the prime on a project like this, and focusing on a need that a particular building has to replace a system. So it wouldn't necessarily go to a general contractor, it would go to a mechanical contractor. And finally, for utility upgrades, because we own and maintain the utilities on the campus, we often are having to go out and replace portions of lines that may be deteriorating, getting older, may have been damaged by something. So these type of projects can be something small, it could be something very large. But maintaining the infrastructure is the university's responsibility, not the city of LA's. So for design, I wanted to touch a little bit on what are the success factors, both for design and for construction. From design standpoint, this is architecture or engineering services. There are a few things that are pretty critical. First and foremost, we have what's called the basis of design. I think now they've changed the name to facilities standards, but it's the same concept. These are the USC design standards. The design standards will have key components listed there so that whatever a designer is working on, it ties into what is existing on the university campus. So if we have everything, when we're going to be painting something and we're trying to have it look like the university colors, there's a particular red that you have to use. And if it's not the right red, it's going to be rejected because everything looks the same when it comes to that red. So the design standards really help drive the ability to maintain what we have built. Our doors and hardware, our lock shop can't maintain 10 different types of door hardware throughout the campus because someone just decided this one, looks better or whatever the reason. We have standards that you can always find something within the standards that matches what the need is. So all of our projects are bound by those standards, and there's very specific areas where there can be a deviation from that. It has to have a very strong logic behind why there would be a deviation from those standards. And then there's a commitment to sustainability that if you visited USC's website anytime recently, you'll see a lot of information about green building, how we handle waste. The campus is very, very committed to sustainability, and that is part of our design guidelines, as well as commissioning. Performance essentials, this is tied to how we go forward with our work. So our expectations are the consultants having a knowledge of what's in the design standards, controlling the design process so that we stay within budget, making sure that our vendors are going to the site frequently during the design process and seeing physically what they're going to be dealing with so we avoid changes, and making sure that the completed documents are ready to go to bid and that there's a knowledge of the requirements of the LA Department of Building and Safety, including Title 24, ADA, et cetera. When we go into managing the project, that one of the key factors is that the scope of work is very clear for the bidders, that the designers have collaborated with our department, that anything that changes the exterior of a building gets the university architect's approval. During construction, that responses to RFIs come back in a reasonable amount of time, that the design team is reviewing any change orders or RFIs or change order requests, and the payment application from the contractor, and creating a thorough and complete punch list. For lessons learned, the key things that you need to know to be successful at USC: if a proposal is submitted and it includes non-approved sub-consultants, we will tell you in advance if your consultants have been approved or not. If the sub-consultants that you submit in response to an RFQ are not approved, that can keep you from moving forward to an award on a contract. Using outdated information. Everyone knows as-built drawings on almost every project are not as it currently is. It was as it was built way back when. So it requires field surveys. So our expectation is that our design teams go to the site, get familiar with the site, look at it with your own eyes before creating design documents to avoid changes during the construction phase. Our infrastructure needs to be able to support whatever is being designed. So getting a good understanding of what infrastructure is involved in the projects you're working on is critical before deciding on a design. And then making sure that any RFI responses or any changes do not create scope creep on a project and make it so that the project is no longer within bid. Expectations on the construction side. The bid phase is always really critical. That's the case when on any construction project. But making sure to raise questions during the bid process if there is a conflict. If you're not sure, you're going to bid the worst case scenario because you don't want to be caught without covering something and find out it's included, because then you can't change the price. If you're asked to bid a project and you are not going to be able to bid it, you don't think it's a right fit, for whatever reason, you should not bid that project. You should communicate that you're not bidding the project and specify why you're not going to bid the project. Our bids are open to union and to non-union. So there is we're a non-prevailing wage institution, but we do have a guideline on rates that we use. Stipulated sums are full and final, which is the same thing as what you would submit on any lump sum bid. We can't change the number after the bids have been submitted. And then GMP, with or without pre-construction services, is qualifications based. So we start with, we want to find the right fit for a GMP project. Those are typically our much larger scale projects. And then we go to pricing after that. The contract and award process requires a detailed schedule of values breaking down the entire lump sum bid into multiple categories. The hourly labor rates have to be verified and approved. This is how we make sure everybody is within the same guidelines for labor rates. Bonds are required on subcontracts over 100,000. Anything under 100,000 bonds are not required. The negotiation of terms and conditions is on GMP projects, but our lump sum projects do not have an opportunity to negotiate those terms. Part of the bid process is going to be providing a submittal schedule, providing insurance documentation, and providing a full baseline schedule showing that, yes, we can meet the timeline that is in the bid documents. The schedule itself, within 10 days on a GMP project, needs to have all of the details of how you're going to build that project within our timeline, including any shutdowns, inspections, or long lead items. Updated schedules are submitted with change order impact and with payment applications. For each time you submit a pay application, the schedule, an updated schedule, needs to be submitted with that. All the different components of the project should be included in that schedule, including time for commissioning, closeout, any changes that occurred, anything that changes in the supply chain needs to be updated in the schedule as well. For the construction phase, coordinating the site before any subcontractors arrive is critical. Keeping a record of the RFIs, change order proposals, submittals, controlling scope creep. We have a project management information system called eBuilder. Some have used it, some have not. eBuilder, we like to call it the electronic file cabinet, but it's so that everybody has access to the documents that are going on in the project. So daily reports are uploaded there, pay applications, RFIs, the architects answer the RFIs in that system. Project managers can see everything going on. Some RFIs might be for USC to answer. Our project manager answers those. So all the communication on project documentation happens within the eBuilder system. The personnel that are on the project site, one key way to find yourself in hot water with USC is to say, this is the person who's going to be running the project, and they're there for 2 weeks, and then you put them on another project and send us somebody else. Or you switch out personnel multiple times. That is not good on our projects. If you are adept at using BIM, you'll need to use BIM on the larger projects, and make sure that you cover any coordination of parking or site access in your planning. We'll work with you on that, but those are the things that need to be discussed during the bid phase if you have any questions on parking. The communication with your project manager is critical. A lot of times an architect might go to the site and walk the job and try to work something out directly with a contractor on the site. and not include the project manager in that discussion. The project manager is the one who coordinates yes or no on you getting paid for that work. I would always suggest that you make sure your project manager is aware of something that is being changed that is going to cost more money, because only the project manager can authorize that, the architect cannot. And coordinating shutdowns and then getting all of the conditional and unconditional lien releases submitted with pay applications. That's the thing that holds up most payments going to vendors, is not having the lien releases. And then finally on closeout, making sure that the punch list is closed out completely and all documents, including warranties, O&M manuals, all training, all final lien releases, and as-built drawings are completely included in what you are budgeting for the job and are completed in a timely manner. We have many, many, many contractors who get hung up ever getting their retention because they haven't completed their closeout phase, and that's how you get the final check. So lessons learned overall, for job site activity, understanding that this is a very active campus. Because we have college students, you can expect people to be walking through campus, not looking where they're going, they're often looking at their phone. So it requires a special attention to detail for all of our contractors, for anyone driving through campus, to really understand that you can put signage up, but if somebody's looking at their phone, they're not going to see it. So you need many more safety measures in place to make sure that the work you're doing on site is safe for everyone involved. We do all of our crane work off hours so that we have minimal disruptions. We coordinate those activities, a lot of them during Christmas recess, spring break, times when the campus is less active, and then weekends. So planning for that when you are submitting a quote for a job and you know you have crane work, you're going to have to look at your schedule. And if the only time that you can get it done in terms of the timeline to finish is a weekend crane, then you need to include that in your budget. Deliveries and lay down areas, all of that has to be accommodating the fact that we have such an active campus. And the HSC campus has patients and emergency vehicles and you name it. So that has to be thought of when planning there too. Coordination with the owner separate vendors, because we have a lot of vendors that are either departments within our university or contractors who are under a general contract to do specific type of work for us, like our furniture vendors, our voice and data vendors, our audio visual vendors, and then we have lab equipment vendors. All of those people have to have access to the site. And you'll know that through your project manager, but you need to plan for that. Hot work is really critical to be very, very safe. A few years back, we had an ember drop from a lab into a lab below through an opening, and it caused a fire. And so while we're working on, the floor above, and that space is getting improved, a space that wasn't part of the construction ended up having a whole construction project because they had so much fire damage. The big lesson there is whatever you do, don't set off the fire alarm system. It's terrible, terrible. You never want that to happen. One of the critical things to know, if you do a good job working at USC, you will get multiple opportunities to do a good job at USC. So project success leads to repeat business. If you send inexperienced work to the site, not only is that detrimental to that project you're working on, but all of the other project managers will hear about it. If you start strong and end strong and you don't price gouge on changes, you will be in good shape. Price gouging on changes is it's a death knell for us. Again, project managers talk about that. We rank companies within our system, and along with that will be comments about different things that we see that have happened on the job using a particular contractor or designer. So we work to serve what is required of the campus, and understanding that the campus schedule has to be accommodated. So, for example, next Friday is graduation day at USC. No matter what somebody thinks their schedule is going to be, we tell people ahead of time, here are the dates you can't do any work. Graduation date is one of those days you cannot work on a construction project at USC. The campus is shut down. So those dates are provided to our contractors. Those types of dates have to be accommodated. There's no way around that. So here is the process of getting work for design firms. And I touched on this a little bit, but I will go into a little bit more detail here. So there's an RFQ that is submitted for a particular project. So this is for getting pre-qualified overall. A panel reviews the responses to the RFQ and says, yes, this firm is qualified to do work here at USC. Here are the areas that this company has done design work in. So the firm might have experience with offices, with classroom spaces, with landscape, whatever it is. Those are identified by the vendor in their RFQ response, and then our listing of firms checks off which of those different areas a firm is listing as their experience. Once there's a pre-qualification, there can be an interview process. There isn't always. The typical time that there is an interview is if there is a question or we're unclear about someone's experience in a particular area, or we're not sure what they're saying. If we have a question about this person is listed as your lead designer, but their experience is from this other firm, did they get that experience there? What's the story? And then once a firm has been selected, they go on the approved list. That means that project managers can select that firm. So when a project has been fully identified, a project manager goes to the pre-qualified list of firms and they identify which potential vendors might be right for that project. So there might be 12 design firms that have the experience of the type of project that a project manager is looking for. The project manager then will say, okay, I'm looking at all of their RFQ responses. These 6 firms have the closest experience to what I'm looking for. I'm going to ask each of these 6 to give me a proposal. Once those proposals are reviewed, there may or may not be an interview depending on the size of the project. Most of the time there is an interview. And once a firm is selected, we go to contract award. So everything is it's really important that the project managers are able to look at your RFQ response and get a good feel for who the firm is by the RFQ response, because that's how the firms get invited to give us a specific fee proposal on a project. So each of the firms that does work with us and is pre-qualified signs a master architect agreement along with the RFQ. All the firms will have an opportunity to see the master agreement, so you'll know what's required of you in terms of what you would sign. It's pretty critical to read through those in detail because those contracts don't change. They are tried and true within USC, and I've only seen 1 or 2 times when any language has been changed for a particular vendor on our contract agreements. But this slide just gives you a little bit of an idea of the type of information you're going to be needing for your master agreement. And that will be the data that goes into that agreement. And then from that master agreement, you get specific service order contracts for projects. So the master agreement means that anybody can hire you. You're under contract overall, and then contracts are awarded underneath that with a task order. A couple of quick tips is to make sure that that your proposal doesn't conflict with your contract, that your sub-consultants are approved on our approved list before your proposal submitted, and you can always ask your project manager if there's any scope that you're differing from that needs to be called out, and you need to break out your fee by design phase. So you're going to have schematics, design development, construction documents, et cetera, and break that out, including a separate plan check fee that would come out of your reimbursables. These are our minimum insurance requirements. I'm not going to read all this to you. It's very dry. But do feel free to take a picture of this screen so that you have this information handy, and you can check with your insurer to make sure that you have everything you need as part of your insurance, or you can find out what it would take to modify your insurance and do work with USC. Note that one of the things that hangs up most of our contract awards is getting a certificate of insurance or a COI for each contract award. Sometimes that's where companies get a little bogged down in getting everything ready. Contractor approval process. The first steps are the same. There's a RFQ for pre-qualification. A panel reviews it. There may be an interview. And then if you're deemed pre-qualified, you go on to the approved list. So just the same as the design firms. The project managers, when they are looking at a particular project, will determine who they want to have on their bid list, and then they reach out to those bidders using the same method. They're going to go to the RFQ responses, look at the types of projects that a firm has done, look at the scope of work that they have to do, pull together a list of bidders. Then the project goes out to bid in a real traditional sense. When the bids come in, they review those bids, and it goes to selection award. Most times it's the lowest bidder, not all of the time, based on the statement I made before about there may be some reason that the low bid is not responsive for some reason. Again, we're qualifications based. So our forms of agreement, similar to the architect's agreement, there's a master agreement that has task orders for each project that comes under that. So each of those task orders is like a mini contract. We have short form contracts that are very uncommon, usually for some work that's going to turn around in like 3 weeks. Guaranteed maximum price contracts for pre-construction and without pre-construction. Most of them have pre-construction services. And then every once in a while we'll have design build. New parking structure, for example, might be under design build. If we're doing a project that is just fire sprinkler system, we might do that as a design build standalone project. The stipulated sum contracts come with a checklist. That would be part of the contracts package that you will receive. Couple of proposal tips. Again, the master agreement drives everything. Approved USC vendors are critical. Identifying any exclusions or clarifications in the proposal has to be specific. Otherwise, the bid documents govern, the construction schedule submitted with the proposal. it has to show that you're going to be able to, it has to demonstrate that you will be able to complete the project based on the completion date in the bid documents. A schedule of values breakdown of all of the prices and the certificate of insurance. Same with the insurance requirements for design. I'll let you take a photograph of this. But very, very similar in terms of the requirements. Make sure that your insurance carrier can cover all of your needs. Our supplier portal is where your information will go. So once you are pre-qualified, we'll let you know you've been pre-qualified to do work at USC. Then our purchasing department will get you into the supplier portal. They will give you all the data you need in terms of what to include, but our website, if you go to our website and look for the supplier area, you can find a lot of information about what to do to become officially registered as a supplier. You can do that in advance of doing the RFQ and read through that so that you're ready to go once you're pre-qualified. And so the criteria are on the becoming a supplier portion of our website. And those criteria are available for you to review well in advance. We have a few resources that I want to share with you for our basis of design standards. It's on our facilities website. Please go there and make sure, particularly for designers, that you review that and know what's going to be expected. Purchasing and supplier portal are listed there. And then for the RFQs for pre-qualification for architects, engineers, and contractors, that RFQ is coming out June 1st. And so you want to, if you want to be included in that, you want to send an email to Ian Williams at ianwill@usc.edu. This is another page I would suggest people taking a photograph of. And Ian's going to be your key contact to be included to receive the RFQ pre-qualification package. And with that, we can go to questions.
All righty, so there is two questions. One is, let me see that one. It was from Nancy. Question, do maintenance projects also have the same RFQ process, i.e. routine removal of hazardous waste, routine grease trap pumping, etc.? Thank you.
So those projects do not yet have a pre-qualification process. They're moving toward that. Right now, they're a lot less formal. You'd still need to be a supplier in our supplier portal, but their process is really just based on a proposal for the work that is identified.
Thank you. The next question is from Sylvia. Would it be possible to get slide decks shared with us?
Perhaps. We do have this recorded, so I think we'll be able to have the recording available. The actual slide deck itself, I'm not sure.
All right.
I'll have to get back with you because I
Yeah,
know
mean,
there's some
they
things
could go
people
back
update.
through they could review the recording and then, pause it at their leisure. 'Cause
Exactly.
it will be on demand.
Exactly.
Next question from RMS Life Safety. Does USC contracting have any certification preferences, MBE, DVBE, etc.?
Preferences, no. I will say that we definitely encourage all vendors to participate. It's one of the reasons we're here today, is that we really want to encourage small vendors, women-owned vendors, everyone. We're very inclusive in terms of our procurement on the campus and really would like to encourage everyone to participate.
Then we have Amanda from GE Construction. Are we to reach out to Ian directly to be invited to the RFQ process in June?
Yes, Ian will take your name and your email address with your request. You should indicate in your email to her whether you would like the architecture, engineering, or general contracting RFQ, and to be put on the list. It will come out to you likely in an e-blast, so that you'll get that RFQ directly, or you'll get a link to where that RFQ can be accessed through our website.
And once again, this session is being recorded and it will be available on our website within a day or two.
Excellent. I think I did see a question about, do we solicit construction management services? Very rarely. We have an entire team of construction managers and project managers within facilities planning and management. The rare occasion that we might solicit construction management services is if we have a project that is really large and would take our personnel completely off of their regular responsibilities. Our project managers are typically managing between, I'd say, 7 and 14 projects at a time. So if a project gets funded that comes in that requires 100% requirement of project manager's time, then we might go out to a CM firm for that if we can't pull one of our staff people off full-time.
Mhm. Okay. And I don't see, oh, here's another question from Miguel. Do you recommend bidding on low voltage, small projects under 15,000?
Do I recommend it? Yes. If that's the area of expertise of a firm, then yes, absolutely. You should participate in that. And again, a lot of those can be an informal process. The project manager who has something of that nature would just reach out and say, here's the scope of work. Can you submit a quote to us? There are times when the work is small enough that if we have firms that we're familiar with their work and we can just go to one company that's been really successful in the past and say, what would you give us on a quote for this? We might be able to just get one proposal for that. But it depends. And the real key is being successful. So getting an opportunity and putting your best foot forward and being successful, and then getting another opportunity and being successful. You will get invited to things again and again when you do a good job.
All right, next question from Chris. We are suppliers of construction materials / components. Can we still be a certified vendor?
So there's not a pre-qualification process yet for suppliers of materials and components. We are working toward that. It's part of the university strategy overall to be able to qualify vendors and identify if they're a local supplier, an emerging business, etc. That's coming. But it is not part of our pre-qualification criteria at this time.
And do we have any more questions that Allyson may answer for you?
I have a couple of questions.
Mhm.
Allyson, does FPM oversee hospitals?
There's a team from FPM that is housed at the health sciences campus.
Okay. Do you have are you able to provide a forecast, maybe like a look ahead 6 months, so that this our businesses can get a head start in looking to see what you have available in the upcoming year?
No, unfortunately, which drives us crazy. But what I mentioned at the beginning is that projects essentially come along as they get funded. So in our office, we call it, projects drop from the sky, because we have no warning of what's coming in the door. We meet once a week with the other two executive directors, and then there's another five directors that we review all of the requests for projects that come in the door and determine, number one, if it's really a project, or, sometimes it's somebody who's just trying to, get a throw up in the air a number. Sometimes it's a project that's already being addressed. And so we go through that process, and then we assign projects from there. But that Wednesday meeting is typically the place where we find out that new projects have come in. They come every day, but we look at them once a week.
Perfect. Well, obviously, I'm kind of excited to hear about your analogy on the low bid and best value, because many times a business will go in, and I believe it's the responsibility of yourself to make sure that these businesses are successful. So if a lowest bidder came in and didn't add what he needed to, or kind of went in the wrong direction, so then you will take the next best value bid that's very well packaged on there. I did see Gil Vasquez. He did attend. He's our chair emeritus. I don't know if he wants to say anything. I've seen him eating a sandwich. Hey, Gil.
Hi, Daryl. Well, thank you. First of all, I'm delighted to be part of this presentation. Thank you to USC. I think it's a good first step. Mike, I did have a question on your primes. Are you going to require them to subcontract a certain percentage of their work?
To subcontract a certain percentage to other companies, you mean, to
other minority firms,
trades?
Which is very common with the utility industry.
Yeah, we don't specify that. Typically, I find that our primes do have many different subcontractors underneath them, but we don't dictate the percentage.
Okay. That would be very helpful. The subcontractors usually shy away from using minority firms, and when they do, they kind of low bid them. So if you were to have a clause in their contracts that would require them to make sure that percentage of their work was subcontracted out to minority firms, this would be extremely helpful. It also helps because they're able to, in some degree, mentor the smaller firms like ours, like our firms.
So, Allyson, I have another question. So once the business has been accepted into the portal, will there be an opportunity to meet some of the project managers to just kind of say hi? Or I think that would be very instrumental with a lot of our businesses. Will there be an opportunity?
It's a great question, and we get that question a lot. Our challenge has been there are probably 250 different firms that are in our system or pre-qualified. And so to bring that many, opportunities to meet that many people are slim to none, in particular because we are on a hybrid work schedule. And on any given day of the week, our office is probably at 15 to 20% capacity in the office. So when anybody would come to visit, there wouldn't be anyone there, right?
Yeah.
So we are working on two things. One is to have what we used to do with lunch and learns. A firm would come in and they would do a presentation of their whole team and their work on the slide, and we'd be in the training room and they bring lunch in and the whole nine. Instead of doing that, we are doing virtual lunch and learns. We're in the process of setting these up by Zoom. And all of the project managers who can attend will come to the Zoom room. We'll have it broken out into 3 different rooms, and there'll be 3 different firms, and everybody would rotate from room to room every 20 minutes, and the staff would meet 3 firms within that lunch hour on a given Friday brown bag day, which gives us the opportunity, number one, whether somebody is in the office or whether they are working remote, they can come to the event. Then it saves time, it saves money for the vendors having to try to coordinate lunch. You don't know how many people are coming. And really, we can feed ourselves. And so that, there's more, the more we can get into that 1 hour period by giving 3 vendors the opportunity, at least there's face time. So that's one of the things that we are getting set up. We've been inundated all through the pandemic. We were extremely busy where everybody else shut down. We ramped up because construction was an essential service. So we probably did 2 or 3 times as much work during that period. And we're finally coming out the other side where things are normalizing. But that's the first thing that we're looking to do. And hopefully we'll be starting that in June or July, that we'll start doing those meet and greets. The
Great.
second, we're looking at a vendor fair, an in-person vendor fair this summer. So we're looking at having an opportunity to have, all the vendors come out on a particular day. Our staff will know about it. And everybody show up on the same day, and we'll have an hours long event where people can get FaceTime. So those are the 2 things that are in the works.
Perfect.
And thank you to University Relations for being our partner in that.
And this is a question from Theodora. For vendors and suppliers that are generally hired by GCs, does USC share its list of shortlisted GCs on upcoming projects?
So we don't have a short listed firm of GCs. We have a pre-qualified list of GCs. And right now that pre-qualified list is not public. But we are trying to figure out the best way to let vendors know who's qualified to bid, and vice versa, to let general contractors know who's interested in supporting those projects.
Mhm.
Part of the reason that we don't have that hammered out yet is that we started the process of pre-qualifying vendors in 2020. So you can imagine, and it was June of 2020 when we really got into this effort. And part of that reason was that there was such a small group of contractors and designers that were doing all the work at USC, and staff was finding that people were too busy to work on their projects. Prices were reflecting that there wasn't really any competitiveness. But also we knew that there were so many really good vendors among architects, engineers, contractors, subcontractors, you name it, that we weren't really seeing doing work at USC. And so we launched the effort to expand our vendor list at the end of 2020. So what you're seeing in terms of the presentation information and how we're operating now, it is all very new. This is all in the past. We wrapped the first RFQ process in spring of 21. So we're 2 years in to actually establishing this and broadening our base. I'm pleased to say that the expanded list has been embraced by the project managers throughout FPM. New companies are getting an opportunity to work with us and are being very successful. Everybody is willing to help coach people through the process. Our goal is for everyone to be successful working on a project, not just for us, but for the vendors as well. We don't want anyone to fail. And so how we're going to make information available outside of our group is still an emerging topic, because we're still trying to figure out how to make sure we have it available inside of our office first, because it's so new. So it's coming. We don't have the answer to that yet, but stand by.
All right, thank you. Next question from Richard. Does USC consider modular prefabrication as construction materials or as a construction vendor that can apply for a project?
It would depend on a specific project that that design solution would fit for. The vast majority of our projects are existing buildings. And we're working on the interiors of buildings that have, been renovated multiple times. We have historic buildings on campus. Modular, lends itself to a new project, new construction, and we don't really have a lot of those. And when we do, they're usually very specifically designed by the guidelines of the university architect. So it would really be a specific design solution.
Okay. 2 more questions from Delisha. Is there a standard rate that USC uses for structural and civic engineering work? I think this would be helpful for bidding purposes.
For design, for the design side, we do not. We have specific labor rates for contractors. For the design side, because it's professional services, it's not price-based, and so we don't dictate that. However, we do look at, the cost of services for a particular project, and if one firm is way more expensive than another, and they're equally qualified, we wouldn't have a reason to pay more than we need to. So I think is typical in the design industry, everybody comes up with their own rates. It's based on, typically a formula of people's salaries times a multiplier to get to whatever they need in terms of profit mode. And every company decides that on their own. So we don't dictate anything on the rates.
Okay. And this is not a question, but it looks like a statement from Marilupe. It would be also helpful to use a percentage of WOSB certified by SBA to be on the proposal requirements, as well as the 8S certified firms.
No, she meant to say 8A.
Oh, 8A, got it. Thank
Right.
you.
Well, all those are all certifications, but I'm not sure that USC is regulated.
We're not
use
a
them.
public entity again, so
Okay.
So
And that's all I have on the chat.
Not bad. It's 4:03.
I talk fast. I'm sorry in advance. I talk so fast,
It's all
but
good. It's all
I want to
good.
make sure we had enough time for Q&A, so.
All right.
Well, we have one last question that just popped up from Sylvia. My
Mhm.
firm provides safety management, hired mostly under GS subs, but sometimes under the owner's rep. How do you deal with safety? And would you have a need to augment your safety staff in the future?
At this time, we don't. We have a full-time safety team that addresses our safety needs.
Okay. I think with that, Mr. Chairman,
I would like to thank everybody for hanging in there. Hopefully this information was useful, and we'll look forward to the next steps, Allyson. I'm sure we'll have a few more questions, and maybe we can debrief next week, and maybe we can come up and make sure that we send everybody that participated the next step. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have an amazing what's left of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.